Hello, my name's Ben, and I'm going to show you how to get started on the violin. Basically, the biggest challenge with playing the violin, because it's really kind of an awkward position to be in, you're always trying to keep your body as relaxed as possible whilst at the same time playing this awkward instrument. But it's definitely possible as long as you break it down into little sections. So first of all, for example, is how do you hold the bow? Now, when your hand is relaxed, it kind of looks like this. It's just your fingers are curved in a little bit and your thumb is doing the same thing on the other side. So your bow hold is trying to be as close as possible to what your hand does when it's relaxed. And there are 3 points of contact that are important. Number 1 is your pinky sits on the top here. Number 2 is your index finger. It connects to the stick of the bow by the second knuckle right here. These 2 fingers here in the middle, they just relax, they hang out on the side and you don't really use them. And then on the other side you have your thumb. And your thumb is very important that you keep it bent in like this. Because if it sticks out like this, then this whole part of your hand is not relaxed anymore. So you want it curved in like this. And that is how you hold the bow. Now you can even do that with a pencil or a pen or a stick or anything. As long as you've got these 3 points, your pinky sits on the end, all your other fingers hang over the side, your index finger connects by the big knuckle, and then your thumb is bent in on the inside. So you can practice this even when you're just watching TV and you've got a pencil handy. After you've figured out how to hold the bow, you're figuring out how to hold your violin. Now, violins don't come with one, but you should definitely get one. This is called a shoulder rest, and it sits under your violin like this. And what the shoulder rest is for is the shoulder rest prevents you from being like this for ages, because you do this after 5 minutes, your neck's going to be really sore. So, as you can imagine, the shoulder rest sits on your left shoulder like this. Up here you have something that's typically called a chin rest, but I think this is a terrible name because it makes people twist their head and put their chin on it like this. Now again, if you stay like this for more than 5 minutes, your neck's going to be really sore. So the thing to remember with the violin position and your head position is that your head doesn't turn towards the violin. The only thing that it might do is it might tilt a little bit to the side like that. And you might look ever so slightly towards your violin here, but the thing to remember is that when you play the violin, it's muscle memory that does it. So you don't need to look at the strings. Blind people are just as good violin players as people who can see. So I like to think of this as more of a jaw rest, because it's this part here, it's the end of your jaw that sits on it like that. And then if your shoulder rest is on your shoulder correctly and your head is tilted a little bit like that, you'll notice that the violin just stays where it is. You don't use your left hand to hold the violin up. You hold it up here with your head. So once you've figured that out, then we can put your left hand on the shoulder of the violin, like that. And then we can try and have a good bow hold and a good violin position. And then we're looking for a good starting position. Now, the most important thing with the bow is that you want your bow to stay straight as you're bowing. And the most common problem when people bow is that they go from their shoulder like that. Now you see what happens if I move my shoulder is that the bow slides all over the place. So the first thing to realize is that once you've found this position to begin with, the way you're going to move the bow is by opening and closing your elbow. Your shoulder doesn't move at all. Your shoulder will open and close like this to get to other strings. But when you're bowing down and up, it's mostly just your elbow that's opening and closing. And so the first thing to try and do is to see if you can make some nice down bows and up bows on each string. The first string on the right hand side is called the E string, and it sounds like this. Then if you open your arm up a little bit, open your shoulder, then you get to the A string. And you want to try and stay in the top half of your bow, because when you start going in the bottom half, you'll notice that you need your wrist to move a little bit to help keep the bow straight. So at the beginning, we're just going to go from the middle and stay in the top half of the bow. Now lift your arm up a little bit more when we get to the D string. And then finally, if you lift your arm all the way, we'll get to the G string. So a really good first exercise to do is to just take any string and just see if you can make a nice smooth sound. If you press a little too hard, you'll get this. And if you don't press hard enough, you get a kind of whispery sound, which is no good either. So it takes a while to be able to just play the open strings smoothly. And another exercise that would be good to do is to, for example, decide we're going to play each string 4 times, going from the E string to the G string, and then from the G string back like this. And you can also make up different little rhythms. A classic one to try is one called Mississippi Hop Hop, which goes like this. Mississippi Hop Hop. And you could try and do that on all your strings. So typically in a first lesson, that's about as far as we'll get, because it's really important that at the beginning you get used to using your bowing arm. Because I promise that as soon as we start adding the left hand and playing other notes with your left hand, your brain is going to be entirely focused on what's going on over here, and it's going to be impossible to remember all the things about keeping your bow straight, applying the right amount of pressure, keeping your bow hold correct. So the more open string practice that you can do with your left hand just here on the shoulder, especially at the beginning, is really, really good, because 90% of the time, if your violin doesn't sound so nice, it's almost always because it's a problem with the bow and not the left hand. So after you've got a good violin position, you know how to bow straight and make a nice smooth sound, then we can start talking about the left hand as well. Now the left hand, you're going to hold it at the end of the neck, like this. The most important thing for your left hand is that your wrist needs to stay low, like this. You don't want it up high, like this, because, well, one, your fingers are pointing the wrong way, and when your wrist is low, the tips of your fingers are closer to where they need to be. And then another very good reason is that when you're playing concertos in a few months, and you're going to be shifting into different positions, you don't want your wrist getting stuck behind the body of your violin. You want it out of the way so that when you move up, you can move smoothly. Now, we'll put some stickers on your fingerboard at the beginning so that you know where to put them. But what we need to do before that is also make sure that you're holding it correctly over here. And so your thumb is going to be on this side, and you hold the violin kind of where your finger becomes your hand. So there is a little bit of space between the bottom of your, you don't hold it down here because then your fingers are too far away. So just that little difference of holding it here compared to here is really useful for keeping your fingers as close as possible to where they need to be. Now, the first thing we might do is put your first finger on the first string. And if this is an E string, your first finger on the E string makes an F. Then we could put your second finger on the first string. That makes a G. And then with your third finger, well, in music the notes only go up to G, so we go back to the beginning. Your third finger is an A. And we would practice doing this a lot. Because, for example, the most common thing that happens when you put your fingers down is that you start to grab the neck like this. And we want to make sure that you can go from no fingers to 1, to 2, to 3, and it's just your fingers that are moving and not your wrist coming up like this. So we might practice just playing the open E string and the first finger F. Take it off. Put it on. Then we could add the second finger and go 2, 1, 2, 1. And then we can add the third finger as well and go 3, 2, 3, 2. And then, after a while, you'll be able to do all three. So you'll go from no fingers, open, to first finger, second finger, and third. All while making sure that your wrist doesn't end up here, like this. So, E string, First finger, second finger, and third finger. And now we're doing something that starts to sound a little bit like a scale. And scales are really great to learn because that's kind of like learning the alphabet before you learn a language. It's really nice to know what the letters are if you want to make words and phrases later on. So the first scale that you would learn on the violin is called an A major scale. And so instead of starting on the E string, which is the string on the right hand side, we're going to go over one string to the A string. And the position of your fingers is going to be the same. When you first start out on violin, your second and third finger are close to each other, and your first finger is on its own at the back here. Now if we start on the A string, we'll have A, first finger is B, second finger is C, third finger is D. Then we take everything off and we go to the E string, first finger is F, second finger is G, third finger is A. And that's your A major scale. Now after a while, you'll be able to play it faster, and you might just do two bows to a note like this. And then in the end, you'll be able to just do one note, one bow to a note like this. And that's a full A major scale going up and down. On the violin, there's two other scales that you can play pretty early on, and they're the D scale and the G scale. Now for the D scale, we just have to move over across one string. Now we're on the two middle strings. And then finally, you also have a G scale, which is on the bottom two strings. And so now you can play a whole load of notes on all of the strings. You've got a good bow hold, and you know how to create a nice smooth sound without it sounding too scratchy. And so that would definitely be everything that we would do in lesson 1. So why don't you join me for lesson 2 in a minute, where we go through the Suzuki Violin Book 1.